Have you ever felt?
Are you listening?
In our family, no. Even among my cousins, which were all shades from vanilla all the way to the richest hue of chocolate. No, I probably didn't become aware of colorism until maybe second or third grade, where there was this little light skinned girl that everybody liked or whatever, and she was like, "Well, I would like you, but you're too dark. You like the color charcoal." And so it was then that I became aware that the love and affirmation for my complexion was not perceived in the same method that it was outside of there. Then of course you have when folk want to insult you, the first thing they say is yo black ass. So sorry, mom. And so those things, you become aware of them, and I can't say that it impacted me in a way to where I battled with low self-esteem. The issues that I had growing up with self-esteem was attributed to my weight more so than my color, because at home it was, we were constantly bombarded with these images of black folk, and that was always preached and promoted in our home. So whatever trauma that I may have experienced on the playground, or in elementary school or in middle school or what have you, when I came home, there was such an environment that my parents created to where we felt loved, we felt supported, and my parents were very insistent on presenting images of people that looked like us. I mean, it's a practice that I do now with my daughters, because I realize that black women are subject to stigmas and stereotypes that I, as a black man, will not begin to understand, because it's not my world, it's not my reality. What I can do is listen to other sisters when they talk about those things, and because the thing is, I even notice how my oldest daughter, who is a little bit closer to my complexion as opposed to my baby girl, who is she looked like a mama. And how I would have to literally stop people, and because they would acknowledge Kalani, my baby girl, and it's like, "Oh, hi, Kamari, my oldest." And so, I'm an overprotective parent, and I'm always thinking of those things. Are they taking to her because she's lighter skinned, and maybe not paying attention as much to my oldest. And so there were times I had to stop and say, "Hey, listen, I have two daughters. You only told one of them that she was cute. You only told one of them that she was beautiful." And so with that, I try to make sure that I'm aware of that, and that I spend as much time as I can telling my daughters every day that they're beautiful, that hue and complexion does not change the fact that at the end of the day you are an African American, that you're black, and that there are going to be issues and things that you're going to have to deal with, and that lighter skin does not exempt you from some of the challenges that they exist. I only have so much time with them to really, really, really help shape their thinking and their perspective about themselves. And so I can't speak for other people, but for the most part, in my home, we don't really have white Barbie dolls. And it's not that I'm trying to promote a anti-white or anything like that, but it's I only have so much time before they are exposed to a world that looks for ways to pull them down. So, wow, man. Whoo, how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go?
As far as you are willing to go.
we can start with the fact that if we're going to be real, white women were considered off limits to black men. So for many of us, light skin was the next best thing. And you would disrespect, you would treat a light-skinned woman with her hazel eyes or with her more European features as the trophy, but the one who comforted you and nurtured you, and the one who was making sure that you was eating on campus and making sure that you had gas. That's cool, it's the life. The one who looked more like your mama and your auntie and your big mama. That was the one that you would spend your time with privately, but you would not take her out publicly. And I would see that. We'll see that in college. And I never quite understood why, as black men, there was almost always a sort of an affinity, for that. I think maybe some of it could be rooted in the fact that black women were even hypersexualized or oversexualized based on complexion. If, like, for example, the television series Power, where you have Miss Angela Valdez, who is, you can say she's Latina, but from my perspective, you see, this light-skinned trophy that Ghost is just head over heels crazy for. And you have his wife, who's beautiful, melanin-rich chocolate sister, who has been devoted, faithful. She had her moments, but it's that, why are you choosing this over what you have at home, which to me, kind of represented, degree of stability. And even in the love-making scenes, African American women are seen as more, darker complected women are seen as more sexually free, wild, more sexually objectified in a negative light, whereas light-skinned women are kind of treated like this this trophy. And you would see that in just if you get a sense, just take a look at some of the films in terms of how they treat lovemaking scenes with light skin as opposed to dark skin. Prime example would be Keisha from Belly, dark skinned sister, as opposed to Jason's Lyric. So, you have that. Yeah.
They don't.
I'm sorry, guys. We have to take that lick. If we look at urban culture, when you look at the video girls that are presented, oftentimes they look more European. It's, like Trey Songz. He has a song that's called Foreign, in which he literally almost worships and glorifies light-skinned women and women from other cultures. And, he makes a couple references to darker complected women, but it's almost this ode and this praise. And you just pay attention to hip-hop culture and the video girls, who's getting the bookings. Now, because there's been a lot of attention that has been raised around it, you're beginning to see it. Like an example would be Wale. Another one, Chance the Rapper. Ludacris, a video that he did. I think the song was Girls Around the World. And he makes a reference about, all the most beautiful girls reside in Africa. But I think, part of the reason why we continue as black men, particularly dark-skinned black men, why some of us tend to perpetuate those stereotypes is because, to a certain extent, some of us have not gotten past the concept of our own dark skin being something dirty, or something that is abhorred, something that's not good, our dark skin being dirty. So for some of us, we ascribe to the likeness, so as a way of maybe purging our own perceived mental and emotional transgressions. Oftentimes stereotypes that were projected on us, like when, grandma would say, or like, girl, get out there, sun, or boy, get out there, sun, you gonna get dark. I said, that's a bad thing. Then of course we can even, chop it up and we start dealing with the, quote unquote good hair versus, quote unquote nappy hair. When we start talking about broad nose and the full lips and full hips and the what I've heard some brothers say and make the statement is, they want the hips, they want the lips, but they don't want the quote unquote attitude that quote unquote dark skinned women project. And as a man who's dated both, I haven't seen a difference in terms of one complexion. I mean, how in the world do we equate a mental state with, but I haven't really seen that. I mean, in some of the more melanin-rich sisters that I've dated and talked to, they've talked a lot about some of the stereotypes and things that they've dealt with, and the frustration of not being good enough. In fact, one sister, dear friend of mine, we were in seminary together. I mean, you would think on paper she would just be the quintessential definition. Holds several degrees. She's self-employed. Is actually slated to become a parishioner actually very, very, very soon. But being slighted and being passed over by quote unquote eligible black men for lighter skinned women, and looking at it from the perspective of, she's offering you nothing but a face. She's a trophy, but there isn't any substance there. And some of that, of course, is rooted in the fact that men were visual, and doesn't quite excuse it, but hopefully explain some of it. But yeah, I mean, men, we have to take that lick of promoting and continuing to perpetuate a lot of those stereotypes. And once we do, not saying that it's completely on us, but if we make that adjustment, I think it can open up the door to some other things. And ghetto and ratchet, see, and again, and that goes back to that I'm wanting to in some way escape or disassociate with a certain stigma that they have been labeled with, and have to a large extent they've kind of embraced that. And I thought that was the craziest thing, and I'm like, dude, like, are you serious? I guess when we shake off the fat off of the bone, the light skin, dark skin Willie Lynch tactic that was used was really, the whole purpose was to divide, and it worked so well. We began to perpetuate that, even amongst ourselves. So I think maybe one of the ways that we get past that and we overcome this is that we have to see all shades as black. We have to see all features, all African features, as being beautiful, and we have to make sure that we do that we're balanced in our presentation of what is black and beautiful, because oftentimes what's presented as being black and beautiful looks so far removed from what the reality of what black is. If I'm making sense, it's so far European that it does. Like, for example, Prince William. Is it William or is it Harry? Harry is marrying a sister, and I'm like, oh really? Oh, okay. Okay, she's a sister, but is she perceived as being a black woman, or is it in name and genealogy only? because you have the same issue in Brazil, where you have like almost 88% of the population of Brazilians look like me. But what's presented and what's promoted as Brazilian is they have the black features, thick thighs, which save lives. You have the hips, you have the full figure, but the more European features are what's worshipped. I mean, and then you start looking at guys like Sammy Sosa who bleached themselves, and Lil Kim, and what's really scary is like now you have folks in Niger and Tanzania and Nigeria and the Cameroon and South Africa who are bleaching their skin. Like, melanin is a gift. Like, and not to be conspiracy theorist, but I mean, research the price of melanin on the black market. And you would want to strip, not, start dealing with, carbon and how that being, the if I understand correctly, like the most essential molecule to life and the different things that you can do with that. Why would you strip that away from that? Your melanin and your complexion, your dark skin is a gift. That's why we don't age. But yeah, and when we go around the world and start looking at, colorism and color complexes, you look at India and the caste system, the dark skin, and how it's, associated with poverty, like the Bengali people who are dark-skinned people, the people from Bangladesh, but if you look on television, and what's interesting, even if you go as far as like Japan and China, because you had African people who migrated and into those areas, even in their culture, there is this wanting this porcelain skin. So there, various lightning techniques and things that they do, for that. So it just feels like the everywhere that Europeans have gone, they have sort of, oh gosh, it's gonna sound so harsh, infected the world with a white is the only standard of beauty, or white is the only acceptable, and the perception of the closer you are to that, then it's kind of like I'm black, but I'm not like black, or how folk are quick to so I'm Native American, or they'll claim I'm oh no, I'm not black, I'm Dominican. And it's like, well, yeah, that's your culture, but you just stopped on the boat just before the rest of us, and that almost wanting to escape anything black, anything associated with dark skin, anything associated with broad nose, anything associated with full lips, and we understand how historically those features were exaggerated and characterized and what have you, in order to be insultive, but. We have to embrace that, and we have to reject those things. I mean, you run across the same thing as it relates to how Jesus was portrayed. I mean, you read him in the Bible, skin, finely burnished brass, and hair like lamb's wool. But you see these pictures of this, light skinned guy. It's almost kind of like Eddie Griffin when he said, have you ever seen a lamb go, ooh, Look, if you look at the texture of a sheep's hair, of a sheep's wool, and you look at our hair, Jesus was a man of color. Just want to let you know that, So, but even that, how that was taken, rearranged, and represented to us in order to associate whiteness or lightness with deity, and I think that plays a lot into the psychology of black men as to why we perpetuate those stereotypes. Mm-hmm. So from that thinking, right? When we look early on in African Americans in film, what did they look like? They looked like they could pass for white. And as time, progresses, when you begin to get into like the black exploitation films, and you really begin to I guess that was kind of like the segue into like urban filmmaking, and you begin to really see black folk in this non-polished, whitewashed, like presentation. You begin to see more darker skinned men in these roles. Has dark skin, for the most part, always been identified with masculinity and strength? I think to a large extent, I think it has, because where were most of us dark skinned folk? We were in the field, which is not to say that our lighter skinned brothers and sisters were not equally as oppressed, but like, if you go back and you do some reading, even though, how we got our various shades was, of course, black women were raped. But if you look at the numbers of dark-skinned women that were sexually assaulted, like even I know it's not something that people really like to dive into or like to dialogue about, but look at the number of dark-skinned women that are sexually assaulted. A lot of that has to do with the hypersexualization of dark skin. It's dark-skinned women historically are generally portrayed into one of two lights. Either it's Mammy, the gentle, affectionate. You go back and look at the Tom and Jerry cartoons. The older, overweight, sweet. Oh boys, like y'all's best to stop all this for Master. Come in here, boys. Y'all get in here, sit down. Or she's this sultry, large breast, big hipped, Jezebel, who interestingly enough, what is perceived for white women as being sexually liberated. A dark-skinned sister, I don't care what anyone says, if she does it, she is labeled a hoe. Yeah, because I'm thinking about specifically, I think it was it Vogue magazine, where on the cover it was LeBron James, and you had I don't know who the girl was. I can't think of her name, but it was almost akin to a picture of King Kong holding a white woman. Yeah, the buck breaking in which black men were raped, as a way of demonstrating superiority over him. Also, when they would take the biggest black buck on the plantation and attach his limbs to four horses and slap them in the rears of the horses into various directions, rip his body apart as a way to instill fear. The statement tall, dark, and handsome. Those images as well. But yeah, this almost animalistic, because when you look at even black athletes, how they're described. Oh, he's a stud. He's a beast. Oh, he's a monster. And in that moment, the presentation of it being positive, but you turn around and those same terms are used when you are talking about Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and even though I'm a 35 year old African American husband and father, I have 3 master's degrees. If I put this hoodie over my head, I'm instantly stigmatized. Instantly. I had it happen one night going into Walmart. It was about 9:48, and I'm going in or what have you. I just left the gym, and the lady, you can tell when people are kind of giving you that, kind of what have you, and she just goes, "Oh, we're closing in 11 minutes." And I stopped and I said, "Is that how you greet your customers?" "Oh, I'm sorry. How you doing?" I said, "Ma'am, stop." I said, because when I was walking into the store, I saw you giving me that once over. I said, I saw the way you live. I'm reading your body language. Okay. I said, so, you just got called out on that. I said, just do me a favor. Don't do that to the next person. Have a good night. So, but but dealing with that, and even some of your light skinned friends, being a little bit more readily accepted by some of your white counterparts or what have you, because they look more like them, and almost having to work harder, and prove your intellectual prowess, whereas like some folk, I know, hey sis, we here. Whereas like some folk just getting in on, she or like one of the terms I would hear would be, she fits the culture of what we're trying to do. Okay, so basically she's black enough, or he's dark enough so you can say that you got your token Negro in there, but he's not dark enough to be perceived as a threat. He won't shake things up, whereas like for me, I cannot hide. I can't say, oh, I'm black and German, or claim some of those. I'm a dark-skinned African American man, everywhere I go. So I'm not able to hide behind a certain degree of cultural ambiguity. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that is embraced. So whenever I see a dark-skinned brother, dark-skinned sister like Ursula Burns, who was the CEO of Xerox, love her, because she to me exemplifies being unapologetically black. Dark-skinned sister, wears her hair cut in a fro, and this is who I am. I love seeing that. Let's be honest. Would Barack Hussein Obama have been elected if he looked like me? Probably not. Okay? He caught hell just trying to get a Senate seat. So I mean, we have to stop. We talk about racial issues and what have you, but until we're really to deal with colorism honestly, and deal with light skin privilege, because it does exist. It exists, and just because it may not be a reality for one, does not deny its existence for several others. If for darker skinned sisters said, well, I've never really experienced that, so I can't really say that. I'm like, well, how do you know that you haven't? Because there are ways of weeding people out without them knowing that they're being weeded out, and there are ways to keep people out of certain doors, without them knowing. Well, you go work hard and just give it everything that you got, and I promise you'll be able to come into this room and say, you fit the stereotype of what we're looking for. Come on in, we'll train you. We'll teach you the culture, of what's done. Man, like it's interesting. Even when we look into, oh God, I know people are mad about this. Even when we start looking into fraternities and sororities, okay, all right? Agree? No. Not,
they're really gonna be mad.
Well, yeah, no, not in terms of Black Social Greek. I pledged other organizations. So, but the and I know folk can say that there wasn't no brown paper bag test. Yeah, on certain campuses with certain organizations, yes, there were. And my question is, why? Why? If we black, then we black. And oh Lord,
I'm trying not to make noise because I don't.
It's
want
okay.
my laughter to be like.
I'm just. Like for example, we start looking at, the stereo. Like for example, I know my aunt is a proud sister, of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She looks like me. Oftentimes when she will ask folks, well, yeah, I'm Greek. Well, what organization? They'll say Sigma Gamma Rho, they'll say Delta Sigma Theta, they'll say Zeta Phi Beta. And she's like, okay, well, why wouldn't you assume or think that I'm not a sister of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated? And even though we know that all organizations aren't like that, and that, you know, a lot of organizations have worked to make sure that their criteria for entry is based on character content and not complexion, we still have to go back and we have to deal with some of these things. And when we start looking into, you know, like I said earlier about, you know, the Blue Vein societies, these social clubs that existed in New Orleans and Lafayette and Opelousas, where if they couldn't see a blue vein, even though you were black, you could hang it up, you know. And so it was creating a certain degree of privilege, even in an underprivileged class.
And I think that's your answer as to why. Because
Wow.
when you approach life as if there's a limited amount of pie, and you can't get the white people's pie.
But I can make sure.
But I can make sure I eliminate other people from the competition, right? By creating a kind of like a middle class. So you have the white people, you have like what they call just Negroes, and then you have colored folks. You know, so it become a different class of people where you can't attain whiteness, but at least you can. And it's, even though they say the same thing with like poor white people, right? Like at least we're not black,
right?
So it's kind of the same thing. Like I don't have like full access, but at least I can say I'm not that person.
Yeah, and it's psychological warfare, and you know it has it's hindered us a lot. It's hindered us a lot because some of our lighter skinned brothers. And I'm saying that all haven't, and they don't, because I don't want this to seem anti, because that's not my heart. I love all people. I love all my black folk.
That's definitely going in the video.
I love all my black folk. Okay, you know, regardless, but as opposed to falling into classism, some of them could have used that influence in order to help their brothers. And some did. But some used it to promote a sense of elitism. I wonder oftentimes if part of the contention that existed between Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois, how much of that could have been attributed to the fact that W.E.B. did agree in private with a lot of the things that Garvey said, regardless of what some of the writings we may read. There were, if his message was much more palatable because of who it came from.
So I quote a couple of light-skinned men in particular, Michael Eric Dyson.
Okay,
who has
love
a
him.
dark-skinned brother who's in jail. He talks very explicitly about like how, as a lighter-skinned man, people assumed he was smarter than his brother, demonized his darker-skinned brother, who's really not even super dark. He's more like a brown-skinned person. And then there's Jesse Williams.
Yeah.
From
Yes.
Grey's Anatomy.
Yes.
He said, you know, European beauty standards have given me a greater platform than my darker skinned brothers. And so I mean, it always makes me feel good to like hear people validate it, because if I say it, are you just jealous? Are you just hating? You know, because colorism goes both ways, because, you know, light skinned people suffer too. I'm like,
This is true.
Yes.
And you know, even though I know that's not the subject of maybe this, but you know, there were those, you know, I saw some light skinned kid get tore out the frame, you know, and for not being dark enough, you know, or, you know, you're not really black, or, you know, almost reversing that same prejudice over things.
Pushback.
Yeah, you know, over things that they really had no control over. You know, like I would hear stories of girls, you know, putting gum in light-skinned girls' hair because it was, you know, the texture, you know, was different, or, you know, or beating up on them or picking on them, or things of that nature, or, you know, you ain't finna steal my boyfriend, you know, that sort of, you know, kind of territory over things that it's like, you know, they didn't choose, you know, that. And so I think, you know, the lever that we have to balance is making sure that we don't turn and perpetuate those things.
And that's why the name of my initiative is Colorism Healing.
Gotcha.
Because I feel like no matter what color you are, like, you have to heal that stuff inside so that you don't perpetuate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, Okay. Final thoughts. Anything else you want to say?
Oh wow, man! This has been like,
you have been awesome.
This has been dope convo, man. Like this is refreshing.
It's so because like it's just me. I do this like all the time, and sometimes because I consume so much conversation about colorism, a lot of times I'm like traumatized from some of the hatred and like people really will just like be like, you just jealous because you ugly or something. Nah, call me ugly, but you know. No. I understand. You get a lot of negativity, and so it's always refreshing to get people who understand, who can speak about it intelligently, and like just. So.
Semi-intelligently, because some like I'm kind of ratchet. Crazy.
Well, you should see some of those Twitter comments. You good?
Well, yeah, I guess final thoughts. As a black man who's of the darker persuasion, I think it becomes important for us to make sure that we affirm blackness as being beautiful. If you like, your lighter skinned sisters, go with that. But don't allow your preference or what you like to be at the expense of a darker skinned woman. I say the same thing about interracial relationships. If you're a black man who chooses to marry a white woman, hey brother, go ahead, more power to you. That is your choice. But don't do that at the expense of painting black women with a broad brush. And so I would say, the same thing on both ends. Let's just affirm blackness. Let's welcome the various complexions and hues and grades of hair and as because it's all black. Let's love ourselves by being what we want to see. Brothers. So whatever you love is what you love, but just be authentic in it. Oh Lord. Sorry.
No, it's because it's all good and it's stuff that I want people to hear. I'm so glad. I don't know. My question. So I'm going in a different direction.
That's okay.
Slightly,
please. You see, I talk about Brainwashed by Tom Burrell. His book.
I read that book, and I actually